Okay, we'll try this and see if this works any better. This looks like it might be working a little better. And let's see if I get any video this time. Yes, it looks like I have fixed it. It appears that my upload stream key, which has always been the same, has been changed. So it looks like we've got it figured out. So check 1, 2. Let me make sure that we have sound. Yes, sound is going through. So what I'm going to do is roll the titles, and then we're going to start again, guys. So what are you going to do? Hang in there. Here we go. Live video. Hello everybody, welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Tuesday, the 17th of March, 2020. This is St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day. This is about as green as what I've owned. It's kind of green, olive drab. I'm going with green. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. And hopefully everybody can see and hear me correctly now. I'm not exactly sure why my stream key had changed and why it was being accepted, the old one. But here we are, and hopefully everybody can see and hear me today. And let's take a look here. I know my buddy Ron is in the chat. We're getting good video and audio. Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you all for the feedback on that. So I had been broadcasting, I thought I was broadcasting for about 20 minutes. So I have to revert back and start over again for things I've already said and done. First of all, a great platform for those of us social distancing. This is a great platform for us to continue to do what we always do here. I want to emphasize that because I am a professional IT technician, I don't say that to brag. The reason I'm bringing it up is exactly times like this that differentiates the pros from the hobbyists. Basically, what it amounts to is at any point, my phone may go off and I may have to end the stream early. This whole week, I'm on a special on-call emergency basis. And sort of like, you know, a fire department or a doctor, you still have to go to work. People are relying on you. And a lot of offices are asking their employees to work remotely from home, and this is putting a big stress on IT departments around the world. So for those of us working in IT, I'm with you, brothers, sisters. I know what it's like. Hang in there. We'll get through it. They're counting on us. The world has to keep going around. Scammers are still scamming. People are still trying to take advantage of each other. And on top of that, we've got this illness traveling around the world. So it's more important than ever to be as vigilant as ever before with regards to scam artists, with regards to making sure that you're safe physically as well as financially, and keeping your identity safe online. One way that helps with that, right now we've got a special. I want to remind you that the folks over at RoboForm are offering you guys, my viewers only, 60% off RoboForm. RoboForm is a password manager that keeps all of your passwords and logins encrypted locally on your own hard drive as well as online on their servers. So that way, if you ever are traveling and you need access to your financial information or a login, you just simply need to remember your login for RoboForm, and you'll have access to all your websites. If for some reason, if RoboForm's site were to go down, all your logins and passwords are still encrypted on your local hard drive. So RoboForm never does this. This is not a paid promotion. This is something that I'm hoping to bring them on as some form of sponsor, but I have to show them the power of this community. And I have to tell you, I've been using RoboForm for over 15 years, and I've never seen a discount this steep ever before. And they're honoring it for not just new customers, but renewals all the way up to 5 years. So if I was you, I'd be getting that 5-year deal if I was you. Now, for anybody who's a renewal or wants to renew to their max, you need to reach out and talk to them personally. So far, from everybody that has contacted me, they've let me know that RoboForm has taken care of them, that they're very satisfied. So, but for those individuals that want to renew, you need to reach out to RoboForm support, explain the situation, explain you're a viewer, you want to take advantage of the discount, and as far as I know, they've taken care of everybody who's asked. So I hope you guys take advantage of this offer. It is only good until the end of March 2020, so you have a little less than 2 weeks if you want to take advantage of this offer. I've never seen a discount this steep from RoboForm before, and I highly encourage all of you, if you're not using a password manager, I strongly advise you to get one, because as I mentioned, times like this, where people are scared and people are distracted with other things, is when you're most vulnerable to a scam artist or a hack. So please, please be vigilant, not just in your physical life, but also in your virtual life, especially now. Thank you, everybody who's joining us. All my friends in blue, welcome in. I got an email this morning from Valentine, who received his computer earlier this morning, and he plugged it in and turned it on, and it's working great. He took a picture of it and sent it to me with the desktop up and running. Whew. So I'm glad that that was diagnosed and repaired correctly, and it arrived safe and sound. Shelby watches us in Maryland, and Shelby said, I have a computer here that was built for gaming, and it always blue screens whenever I start the game. I don't think I've been using it for a total of an hour. I've had it to several repair shops. Nobody can figure it out. Would you take a look at it? I said, sure, mail it to me. And so Shelby did, and it's here behind me. Now, I have just removed the glass panel before I realized I wasn't broadcasting. And the glass panel on this isn't sitting right. Like, I was worried the way it arrived. It was packed the way I recommend, which was it was wrapped in bubble wrap and then laid flat with the graphics card seated down so it's not hanging upside down. And then there's paper wrapped around it in a bigger box. And this glass panel was shifted a bit, and it doesn't quite close all the way, but it looked pretty bad. Well, it turns out with this NZXT case, this design is just got these two little nubs up here on the top, one there, and just one screw. There's nothing else that holds this panel in place. So that is unfortunate because it seems very easy to dislodge it. It doesn't like to sit perfect. However, I was a bit worried because when it arrived, it kind of looked like this. And I was like, oh, geez, you know. But now that I realize that it only has that one screw holding it in, if I push it in there, see, it doesn't even want to seat properly. It doesn't quite seal up right. However, it looks a ton better now than it did. And unfortunately, because the broadcast wasn't going out, we missed that little part of the broadcast. But that's all I've done is taken the side panel off of it. I want to check just one thing here in my settings before we get too far into this. There should be a save button here somewhere. Well, hopefully it's okay. In the meantime, I want to thank Dennis Doya, who contributed $200. I actually spent about $280 on these little Fenlink 2.5 inch to 3.5 inch adapters that are going into a bunch of these HPs that we're be giving away here very soon to disabled American veterans. And so I thought it was around 200. It was like 280 for 20 of these adapters. And I'm going to need them. I think I've got 18 of those adapters now, but when I'm done doing all these machines, I'll be back down to about maybe a dozen. So I like to have a few left over. And my thanks to Dennis Doya for his contribution, because he said, here, let me cover those adapters for you. That was very nice of him. And of course, my thanks to David Hale and to Peter Laycock, John Jack Wilson, and David Stetzel, and a bunch of others who have made generous contributions towards the channel so that I can continue to do this. And, you know, there may be some people running some very old hardware that now is more important than ever to get those machines to them, as people are social distancing. Our majority of our disabled American veterans are elderly, and they're more at risk, and we want to make sure that they have the ability to safely and securely go online and communicate with their loved ones, as well as be able to do any sort of ordering or things when it comes to getting food or supplies, whether it's ordering from Amazon or local grocery stores that may deliver, as well as just being able to tune in and join us here on the chat. So we will be getting to those very soon. I wanted to start by diagnosing this machine here. Now, I did not build this machine. Again, this was sent by a viewer, and let's just take a look at what we've got here. It appears to be a Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo in an NZXT case with an AMD X470 Gaming K4 motherboard from ASRock, Gigabyte, GeForce, GTX, something. I don't know which model that is. We got 2 sticks of G-Skill RAM there. And this motherboard does have the 8-pin and the 4-pin CPU power connector. That 4-pin CPU power connector is not plugged in, nor should it need to be, as long as no overclocking is being done. And looks like we've got, I can't see the power supply under there. It looks like a CX750M Corsair power supply, which is just fine. Where is this SATA cable going? I see 2 SATA cables, but I don't know where they're going. Let's take the other side panel off. I've got out the old, remember this? Remember my Panasonic? Well, I brought it out of retirement because the red Milwaukee went in for warranty repair. As I mentioned, the Milwaukee M4 driver is my favorite one, and it was 2 weeks shy of exactly 1 year from its purchase date. However, it is a 5-year warranty, and I received notification that the repaired or replaced Milwaukee driver is already on its way back to me. So in the meantime, we're going to put the Panasonic back to work, and we'll take a look at what drives are plugged in on this build here. And I don't know how I'm going to replicate the blue screen. In most cases, the first thing I want to do is replicate the customer's error. However, because this requires firing up a game, I think I want to lean towards RAM testing first before I do much of anything else, as well as just looking for anything obvious. Got a Samsung solid state drive here and a mechanical, is that a mechanical? Looks like a laptop mechanical drive is installed down here for some reason. I don't know why. The reason you don't want to put a laptop hard drive in a desktop are these laptop mechanical drives are much, much slower than the desktop versions. And so the slowest part of your computer is going to limit the performance of the computer. So where I want to start with the diagnostic, I don't know if there's an M.2 in here or not, but I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the Samsung drive, and I'm going to disconnect this laptop drive here. I can't see what it is. It looks like there is probably some screws underneath this case that I would have to use to get that out. And it's just not important to me at this point in the diagnostic. I think what I want to do right now is simply run a memory test. In most cases, blue screens are caused by bad drivers, incompatible drivers, corrupted files, or bad memory. Now, there's lots of other reasons for blue screens. Those are just the most common reasons that I've encountered. So I'm going to go ahead and just start plugging this thing in and run memtest on it, and then we'll continue to talk. Now, as I mentioned, I am on call today and the rest of this week where I can be called away at any moment. So I want you to know that it's possible the stream could end abruptly. I'm going to try and I'm going to hope that I can keep this stream short enough that I can help a client as scheduled. But if something happens between now and then and the client calls, I will have to go. So again, it's just that because what I do is not just a hobby, it's a job. I'm under strict orders to be available immediately if needed. So hopefully everything will be okay. In the meantime, let me move this over here. Make sure the power supply is in the off position. And we'll plug the keyboard and mouse in up here. Mitch, by the way, he's got his new machine up and running and very, very happy with it. So that's always good. Let's see, I need an HDMI cable so I can use your monitor. Machine looks like it was built well. I can't really criticize any selection of parts here. Although I think the Hyper 212 Evo is a pain in the butt to install, it is a decent cooler. I think the Mugen 5 is a better cooler. It's more expensive, and it's a, you know, the heatsink on the Mugen 5 is about twice as big as this, so it cools better. But you know, I used a lot of these. Now I think Shelby said this was built in the fall, like back in August, and it has never ever worked, and that they've taken it to several shops and nobody can figure out what's wrong with it. Well, I think you're going to find that's a very common theme. But you know, for somebody to go through the trouble of shipping a computer to me, it's about $80 to $100 shipping each way. And it seems like, for whatever reason, most of the people contacting me lately are all at the opposite side of the country. Times like this, I wish I lived on the other side of the country and I'd probably get a lot more work. But I also suspect that the minute I move over there, everybody in California and Oregon and Washington are just going to call. What are you going to do? But thank goodness, you know, we have the infrastructure in place with FedEx and UPS and DHL and United States Postal Service that, apart from the expense, we have the ability to do this now that, you know, as little as 30 years ago perhaps would not have been possible. Hello to everybody joining me in the chat room. Hello to all my friends in blue. Once again, I want to give shouts out to David Hale, Peter Brooks, John Jack Wilson, Madi Yoel, of course. Madi's been a great supporter of the channel. He's patiently waiting for us to order some more parts so that we can get a build going. There's two other folks that are also patiently waiting. It's really hard to get parts right now. And there's a lot of panic buying happening, not necessarily on computer parts, although a little bit. I think all this is going to calm down. We just have to be patient. You know, a lot of what I teach in computer repair, I also attribute to life, which is just, you know, there's some things that you just deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't control it, so you deal with it. And we're in a situation right now where we just have to do our best to deal with it. And it is what it is. We'll try not to aggravate it. We'll try not to make it any worse. And we'll try to put forth our best effort to make the most out of this time that we have. Because if you are social distancing, that's good time. It's good time to get things done around the house you've been meaning to do. I've got a faucet to put in. I've got a dishwasher I haven't had time to put in. I've got about 1,000 books waiting for me to read. Unfortunately, because I'm in IT, the exact opposite happens where everything just got busier. But for the rest of you, I hope that you're not just staying at home in fear. That doesn't really help you or protect you. But I also hope that you are staying home and just making the best of it. So if I can keep you entertained and educated along the way, then we'll both be a lot happier. So thank you for joining me today. And Chris says apparently Amazon's restricting delivery to essential merchandise. Yeah, I believe that to be true. It's really hard to know how long this will go on for, but people, in my experience, when something shocking or unusual happens, there's a big reaction and then it sort of levels off. So unless the situation continues to get worse, the media isn't really helping things. However, again, nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to continue to do my job. I'm going to continue to do the best I can do and to make the most of every minute. And that's all I can do. You know, whether or not I have a good attitude or a bad attitude doesn't change the world around me. And I hope that other people will adopt that attitude as well. And I hope that other people will help each other in need instead of hoarding things for themselves. That, you know, if you have something extra that somebody needs, that you'll offer it as a good neighbor. But be that as it may, I want to keep everything here on tech. There's enough information out there about this other stuff, not enough information on tech. And this is a great opportunity for us to utilize this time in the best way possible to both educate and entertain ourselves. So with that being out of the way, I've got here my MemTest 86 flash drive, and I'm going to plug that in, turn this machine on, power supply is on, and I know there's a power switch up here somewhere, there it is. And let's go over to camera 2. Okay, I'm going to use your monitor. Hang in there for a minute. We're going to try and get to, what is it, F12, F11? One of those is a boot menu. Ooh, that's not good. So I can already see that the BIOS is not set up correctly because it's trying to boot from the network, which shouldn't even be an option. That's used in offices where servers provide the operating system for the computer to boot from. So what I want to do, I want to get rid of that. I want to turn that off because it's really annoying. Let's see if I can get into the BIOS. If it isn't going to let me in the BIOS. And I can't really see because my screen is so tiny. Hang in there. We're going to get there. I've changed my view so I can see a little better. You're going to see no signal anytime the computer goes to restart. Press F2 or delete to run setup. Oh, I have to, well, it should be working. Okay, F2. I guess I have to be patient. Come on, get me in the BIOS. There we go, that's what I want. And so what I'm going to do, first of all, I want to turn this off. So we have two UEFI disks there, and then it does have the USB as the first boot option. And I want to turn on the defaults for the BIOS. So we're going to load the UEFI defaults and click yes on that. And let me go back to boot, make sure that didn't change. And we'll just take a quick look through here for anything obvious or disturbing. NVMe sanitization tool. Okay. And we are running BIOS version 3.40 on an X470 Gaming K4. I want to check, first of all, before I do anything else, let's see what the latest BIOS version is for this motherboard and see if we have the latest one. So it's on ASRock. All I'm doing is I'm going into Google. ASRock X470. What did I say this was called? Gaming K4. And it appears, oh, it's a fatality board. That's interesting. Fatality was at one point, you know, the guy when it came to gaming, and got a endorsement deal. Hang in there for a minute, guys. Hold on just 1 second. Let's see. BIOS version. Oh, there's quite a few new ones. So 3.7. ASRock did not recommending this BIOS if Pinnacle, Raven, Summit, or Bristol Ridge CPU is being used. Okay. Pinnacle, Raven, Summit, or Bristol. You know, I've not heard these terms for AMD BIOSes before, so I'm not quite sure. So for that reason, I'm not going to update the BIOS just yet. And let's go ahead and just leave it as it is for right now. Well, it is a Ryzen 5 2600X. And I'm not sure which family of chips that is in. Yeah, Chris Storer says that he believes those are AMD code names for their architecture. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Those are, like, Intel has Haswell and Kaby Lake and such. I don't know which family of chips the Ryzen 5 2600X. Roger says those are all old CPUs, and okay. I was hoping that would be the case. I wouldn't think they'd release a BIOS update that made it incompatible with the latest chips. So let me go ahead and extract the BIOS. I know you guys can't see me right now. I'm using the streaming computer to grab the latest BIOS file and copy it to my 2 gig flash drive that I use for BIOS flashing. And there is a new version of OBS that's ready to come out that's going to enable window capture. It's always been there and it's never worked, and they supposedly have finally fixed it. And then in the future, I'll be able to show you these screens without having to do a whole full screen capture, which creates a video feedback loop, which is really annoying, which is why I just stopped doing it. So what I'll do, let me unplug the memtest flash drive and plug in the BIOS flash drive. And I think we're going to start with that. And if I go under, oh gosh, where is it in here? Advanced? No, tool. It's got to be a tool. Instant flash. Update. Do you want to update? Yes. Okay. So we'll go ahead and let that run. Thanks for your help in the chat room. Chris Storer says it's Pinnacle Ridge. A couple others are saying that as well. Did it say not to do it if it was Pinnacle? I don't remember. Let's take a look. ASRock. What did I say this was? X470 Gaming K4. So while it's flashing, I'm just going to read about it. I typically just grab the latest BIOS because it's saying 3.3. which is what the computer had, well, once you go to 3.3, you can't go backwards. That was released in June. And they changed some things with 3.31 with the Pinnacle CPU. They changed the AMD AG-ESA combo with 3.4. And it's not saying that this AGSA combo update patch B is not going to work with Pinnacle. It's simply not recommending it with Pinnacle. So I don't think this will have to do with this chip, because this is a fairly, well, this is a new build. But, you know, one of the things you take on responsibility for as a computer technician is, you know, if you break your customer's stuff, you're going to be expected to replace it. And I'm sort of at a point in my career where when I have an opportunity to learn something new like this, if it's going to cost me a motherboard or if it's going to cost me a chip, then that's the price of my education. I'm okay with that. You know, we're not dealing with a super high-end system. We're also not dealing with a business that's counting on this for production work or what we call mission critical work. So I can afford to play a little bit and experiment. I always like to run the latest BIOS. This is the very first time that I've ever seen a BIOS say that it's not recommended for certain versions of CPUs. But I can only imagine that's got to be for older stuff. I can't imagine that that's for current chips. But I could be wrong, and if I am, we're going to find out here, because this is all live, this is all unscripted, this is the way I like to keep it. When you go to work for a living, people who go to work, they make mistakes throughout the day because we're not robots. People on the internet, they like to tease people who make mistakes. They like to make fun of other people who are actually doing something. And keep that in mind when you're reading nasty comments or smart alecky comments from other YouTube content creators or in their comment section. Know the difference, that at least that person did something, right? Versus the person who was critical, who did nothing but sit on their keyboard and be nasty. It says, programming success, press enter to reboot the system. So here we go. So the system is shutting off and turning back on right now. And let's see. Take a look at what happens here. Wildhill says you should be able to roll the BIOS back if necessary. Yeah, I believe that's true as well. Hopefully we get a power on self-test, and it looks like it's booting up okay. So I'm good with that. That's my main concern, is whether or not it posts. I don't know what the harm, what the potential harm is with this later BIOS with certain CPUs. Again, it doesn't say that it's incompatible. It just says that it's not recommended. There's always a difference between the word recommended and the word required, and you'll even see that on the fuel door of a car. If a car requires premium gas, like European cars often do, it'll often say inside of the fuel cap, or the lid that opens up the fuel access cap, says premium fuel required. But on cars like Toyotas and Nissans, it may say premium fuel recommended, which means you don't have to use the more expensive fuel. Okay, so right now it says no proper boot device is selected. That's fine. I'm going to pull out the flash drive. I'm plugging in the memtest 86 flash drive. And now we're going to start the computer up again and see. It should just boot right into memtest 86. And hopefully that'll just happen automatically, because I've disconnected both hard drives and it looks like there's no other drive in the system. There are heat sinks covering the M.2 slot, so I can't tell if there's an M.2 in this motherboard or not. But given that it's not booting, if there is an M.2, then they did not use it as their boot drive, which wouldn't make any sense to me. So I will check that after this. But the first thing I want to do is make sure we're not having any RAM issues, because as I mentioned, RAM is often the case when it comes to blue screen errors. And he also mentioned that this happens primarily when starting a game and every single time they start the game. So all I want to do right now is look for anything obvious. And, you know, if we have a bad RAM module, it's going to make my job a lot easier if I get that lucky. So this takes a moment. We have to sit here and wait while memtest86 is getting the memory size, whatever that means. And on some computers, it flies through this part. On other computers, it's quite a bit slower. Be patient. Allow it enough time to do whatever it needs to do for your unique hardware configuration. Sometimes things are not exactly as you see them on a YouTube video because you're not using the exact same hardware. So the test is going to start automatically here in just a moment. Again, I'm not touching anything. I'm just letting the test do its own thing. And we'll keep an eye on this as it runs through a series of 13 different tests. It's on test number 2 of 13, and it's on pass 1 of 4 passes. That means it goes through potentially all 13 tests 4 times. And the reason it does that is some memory problems only occur after the memory heats up. In my experience, that's very, very rare. If we can get through 1 full pass, if you look at the bottom of the screen, it says pass 1/4. The minute that says pass 2, then if there's 0 errors, because you see right after that it says errors 0, right at the bottom. As long as we stay at 0 errors on pass 2, then I'm not going to run through all, I'm not repeating the test 4 times, okay? The test takes a while to run, and depending on how much RAM you've got, how fast your computer is, how fast, well, basically, how long it takes is based on what you've got and how fast it is. So I could let this potentially run for hours. Let me get camera 1 back on, and while that's running, I'll put myself in a corner here once I grab the right screen. There I am. And that way we can do both. Now, if Michael says, Carey, the 2600 Edge is, the 2600X is a pinnacle range chip, so the 3.7 BIOS is not advised. Well, we were getting blue screen errors according to the customer. And so I appreciate that information, and I'm not exactly sure why they're not advising it. So at this point in the diagnostic, I'm going to leave everything alone. Remember that whether or not something is advised or not advised is very different from saying this isn't going to work. You understand? Like there's times where companies will lay out a disclaimer to wash their hands of saying, hey, look, if you do this, it may work better than it's ever worked before. But if it doesn't and it causes problems, we're not responsible, and therefore we're not recommending it for people that have that range. Companies tend to play it on the safe side rather than looking out for what's best for the customer. They're looking out for what's best for the company. You understand? So I don't know exactly what the reasoning is at this point, but so far everything's working like it should, and I don't yet have a reason to roll the BIOS back. And quite frankly, if the blue screen errors go away and the customer is able to game with this machine, then we're going to leave that BIOS on there. However, if the blue screens continue, then that could be related to the BIOS. It could be related not only to the BIOS that was on the machine, because there was an update to it from 3.3 or 3.4 to 4.1 or 3.1. That maybe that just one little update addressed that particular issue. I don't know yet. I want to first verify that we don't have any issues with the RAM. I can tell you that the customer told me that it went to 2 or 3 different shops and nobody could fix this. Now, I have never had a computer here that I could not fix. I've had machines here that didn't make sense to fix. I've got a machine here right now. There's a laptop, and the customer cannot remember his login password for Windows 10, which is associated with a Microsoft account, and he cannot remember the login password, he can't remember his email password, and the laptop has got a crack in it. This may cost more money in time to try and get that password cracked than the machine is worth, honestly. Because even if we get the machine logged in, we still end up with this big crack across the hinge, and the laptop is already several years old, and that money for all that labor to try and get everything corrected may be close to or over the price of a new laptop, depending on what kind of laptop the customer could buy. Labor in America is more expensive than parts, and parts on an older laptop are hard to find and can be very expensive. And as far as the password goes, passwords are designed to keep people out. And when this customer forgot his password and can't even remember his email password, this is where a program like RoboForm sure would come in handy, because at least then, if he had that information encrypted in RoboForm, even though RoboForm wouldn't log into Windows for him, he could have created a little Windows login note that's encrypted in his password file with RoboForm to remind him, so he could look and edit that and say, oh, I made a note to myself that that's what my login password is. And because RoboForm is synchronizing the encrypted saved password information onto RoboForm servers, he would only have to remember his RoboForm password. Now, if he forgot his RoboForm password, I don't know what he's going to do at that point. Because typically password verifications and resets are done through email, and he doesn't remember his email password. So that may be a situation where, yes, I can fix it, but it doesn't make sense for me to fix it if it's going to cost a lot of money. But every computer that comes in here for repair can be repaired. It just doesn't always financially make sense to do it. But I have yet to see a computer come here that I've not been able to fix. Remember, we had a customer bring a machine to several places that was spontaneously rebooting itself, and nobody could figure it out. And here, live on this channel, we figured out he had a stuck reset switch that was intermittently shorting out. We had a customer recently, Valentine, who got his computer and it would turn on and immediately turn off. We figured out we have a stuck power switch. Now, in that case, nobody looked at it, just me, but that's a very unusual problem. We had a computer where every single part of a brand new build was replaced and Windows 10 would not install. Customer was completely baffled, and every resource the customer had available to him was unable to find a resolution to this. It was an unsolvable problem, and that's when I discovered that the Gigabyte BIOS, well, I didn't discover it. You guys in the chat discovered it and brought it to my attention, that the Gigabyte BIOS was set to a date of like the year 3029, even though the BIOS says that the range is 2099, maximum year is 2099. It says it. You can only put a maximum year of 20, but it let somebody make a typo, make a mistake. The number 3 is right next to the number 2. Save that BIOS, and then Windows 10 freaked out. It would not install. It would constantly reset the BIOS back to 3029, even if you replace the motherboard. So that was a fun one. We've been able to fix some really cool, bizarre stuff here. We've seen screens that look like static. Remember that one? All I did is add a Wi-Fi card, and the screen just all became static. What was that all about? Who knows? Change the motherboard? We're trying to process these as quickly as we can. We're not so much worried about why as we are worried about getting it fixed quickly, which also means getting it fixed less expensively, which results in the customer getting the computer back faster and getting back to work sooner and enabling my time to free up to help the next customer. So we have yet to see a problem here that could not be fixed. I want to emphasize, whatever is causing this, we will figure it out. Does anybody have any questions for me? Some people are talking about password unlocking software. There's plenty of programs out there to reset a Windows password, but the problem is when it's tied into a Microsoft account. As far as I know, none of that software is free. However, I wouldn't be opposed to spending, $20, $30 to help this customer out. I can't charge the customer anymore, right? I have a flat labor rate, so anything I spend comes out of my profit. That being said, this customer does not use this for work. The machine is old. It's probably 6 or 7 years old, which is old for a laptop. And if anything, the customer says, look, if you can't figure it out, can you take the solid state drive out of it, because I'd like to destroy it. So in other words, the customer doesn't even want what's on it. He just wants to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. So, and with everything being as busy as it is right now, this is something that's going to take some time to try and figure it out to get through this password issue. But I'll follow up on that as soon as I have more information. What is the RoboForm discount code again? There's no RoboForm discount code. You use the link in the video notes below this video. There should be a link there, and it should just automatically give you the 60% off. Is it in the video notes? It should be. Yeah, just go to roboform.com/Carey, and then that applies the discount for you. Should not need a code. Alhesh says you can reset the Microsoft account password on any PC. One of the things that I go out of my way to do here is to not demonstrate hacking. Even though you would say, well, it's educational to know how to crack a password, it's also the thing thieves do and people who get computers that were perhaps stolen. They go, hey, I got a laptop for $20 from a guy on Facebook or whatever, but it's got a password. How do I buy that? I don't want to be an accomplice to potential crime, so I try to avoid discussing this. As a result, when it comes to this type of lockpicking, it's work I typically do not do, because in most cases, the whole situation is shady. This is different. This is an older gentleman who, look, we all get older, we all start forgetting things. I've known this customer. He's not been a regular in the sense that I hear from him very often, but he's been a past customer at least twice before over the last 3 or 4 years. I think maybe 2 times I've helped him. So I know this is real, and this is not my wheelhouse. I would say if there is a program that you've used, not a program that you're Googling, because there's a lot of programs that advertise that they can do these things and then they actually don't, or they want to charge a lot of money. But if there's an affordable program to remove a Microsoft login ID password at Windows Startup, if you would reach out to me privately, I would appreciate it so I can investigate that. Right now I'm being stretched in so many different directions. That is essentially what I'm going to have to do when I have some time. But if any of you that have real experience with a product that does work and it's affordable, please send me an email. The email address is carey@tech-vets.com. So Carey, C-A-R-E-Y, at tech, here, I'll put it in the chat room, carey@tech-vets.com. I sat down and fired off a bunch of thank you emails to people who had contributed via PayPal in the last 4 weeks. If you had contributed and you had not received a thank you email from me, please let me know, because it's really important to me that you guys know how much I appreciate that. And my time management has been really bad lately. There's been a lot of things happening with my business, my personal life. Everything's sort of striking all at once. This whole thing going on with the illness going around isn't making anything any easier. So sometimes things slip through the cracks. And so I apologize if that's happened. If you bring it to my attention, I will make it right. But I do want you to know that this is a viewer-sponsored channel. There are no sponsors here. RoboForm is not paying me at all to tell you about their product. I use their product. I think it's a good product. I think everybody should use it. And I've asked RoboForm to incentivize you to purchase it by taking it and making it under $10 for a license. Now, with regards to somebody was asking about family plans and other things, you'll have to reach out to their support, contact them, let them know you're watching the channel, and ask them. I don't know what sort of offer they may offer for you, but so far from those of you who have reached out to them for like renewals, you guys have all had good news coming back to me that they took care of you. And again, it's one of the reasons why I like RoboForm. It's not only a good product, but the people behind it are good people. And in truth be told, I would love to bring them on as a sponsor one day. I would like them to see a big response from this audience to this offer, and that they would want to be associated with me because they're a product that I use anyway, right? Like Acronis. Speaking of Acronis, they're scheduled to be back on the show, I think, on March 25th, and I will verify that. We'll have Begowden will join back on via Skype, and we'll go through some more steps of how to use Acronis for backing up, restoring, using virtual machines. And if you have questions for Acronis, the best time to ask those is when Baga joins us here. You can ask him directly, or if you don't want to wait, if you go to Google search and type in Acronis Reddit, there is a Reddit forum where Begowden regularly attends and answers questions with anything Acronis related. So if you can wait and ask while he's here, that's great. If you need an answer now, I've had people emailing me and asking me questions about Acronis that I can't answer because I don't know the product inside and out. I barely make use of what the product does. For the most part, I'm imaging or cloning, and that's all I do. Acronis TrueImage does so much more than that, and they offer more than just TrueImage in their software lineup. And the best place to go with any technical questions regarding Acronis or any problems, if you're encountering any issues, is to contact Acronis support. And the easiest way I find is to just type Acronis space Reddit into Google. And the first link that appears is the official Reddit forum from Acronis. And Begowden will answer those questions for you. It's not just anybody answering. Well, I suppose it could be, but when you watch those answers coming from Begowden, you know that they're official and accurate and not some troll toying with you. And of course, Acronis has other areas for support as well, whichever you're most comfortable with using. So looks like, it's hard for me to see my screen because everything's really tiny, but it looks like we've gone through this whole first pass with 0 errors. Let me just verify this real quick. How are we looking? No, we're still on pass 1, and we're on test number 10 of 13. Okay, so 17, almost 18 minutes have gone by, and we haven't finished the first round of tests. So where it's highlighted, you'll see it says test 10. That will go all the way up to test number 13. Then it'll start back over at test 1. And then where it says pass down below, I was hoping I could move the mouse, but I can't show you. I can't highlight it. But down below in the middle of the screen, it says pass 1 of 4. I'm waiting for that to say pass 2 of 4. And to the right of that, it says errors 0. And hopefully it will stay that way when it gets to pass 2. So I will keep checking in. Yes, Acronis is coming on soon. They will be Sharon, if you want to hide those users, yeah, thank you, Sharon. My friends in blue, thank you for taking care of the trolls. I've put Somehow some of the YouTube default settings were changed, which is why I had a problem starting up today. I'm not sure why that happened, and it looked like maybe slow mode had been turned off. What slow mode is, I set it to 12 seconds, and what that means is that a user cannot just slam the chat room and flood it with messages, that each message must have 12 seconds before the same person can post again, and that should help keep the bots under control. I think that's what was happening the other day. They were able to really flood the chat room. I think slow mode got disabled somehow. So, but anyway, you can just keep doing what you're doing there. I appreciate that. And you guys staying on top of it. Like I said, with everything going on right now around the globe with this pandemic, you can see that the scammers are still scamming, and I want to emphasize that it's as important to stay as vigilant virtually as I'm certain you are staying vigilant physically. So in the meantime, I might have missed it. If you had asked a question, please ask again. I will do my best to provide you guys with answers to technical questions. Al Cooey said he did 5 years of RoboForm, great price and support, and it's been a great tool. Al Cooey has also contributed with the veteran builds and was asking about that as well. So thank you to Al for, and of course others like John Jack Wilson and oh, come on, Carey. Just the person's name on top. I'm gonna have to start getting a piece of paper and a pen and start writing names down. But for people that have contributed towards the builds going out to veterans here very soon. If the PC is connected to the internet, you should be able to reset the password by resetting the Microsoft account password. Yeah, you can't reset the Microsoft account password without knowing the password or being able to log into email, and that's not working either. So it's sort of in a loop. There did seem to be some confusion with regards to the time zone I am in. It's a little after 10 o'clock in the morning here in Phoenix. I am not on Mountain Time. It's really frustrating because a lot of times Arizona is not offered as a time zone. And Arizona is basically GMT minus 7 hours, Greenwich Mean Time minus 7, and it stays that way all year round. So for half of the year, Arizona's on Pacific Time, and for the other half of the year, we're on Mountain Time. I'm not exactly sure why or what areas Mountain Time covers. Maybe Colorado, I'm not sure. But I can tell you that, like in Windows, when you set your time zone, you can select Arizona individually. But in other programs, including YouTube online, does not offer Arizona as a time zone. And so whenever the time zone changes, I have to change the time zone manually in YouTube from Mountain Time to Pacific Time and then back to Mountain Time again in the fall. Because, you know, YouTube. Hello to Patrick Rusaw and Jay Toy, Kevin Napier, and Zero Core, Thomas, Dr. No, Tony Wise, Gerald Hall, Gary Whitaker, David Humphreys, Steve Warrington, Irving T. joining us in France says, can I renew my license that I already have, or is this only for new RoboForm customers? Well, it is intended for new RoboForm customers. However, if you write to RoboForm, go to their support section and write to them and let them know, I watch Carey Holzman's YouTube channel and was told that the discount would be honored for existing RoboForm customers, but we had to write in to get it. So if you write in and do that, they should offer you a link or a discount code so that you can renew. Several people that have contacted me have reached out and said that's what Simon from RoboForm said. He said because I asked him, I said, what about for existing clients? He said, if they contact us, we'll take care of them. So there's no code being published for that. You have to reach out. And if you make the effort to reach out, from all the feedback I've gotten, they have been responding and honoring that code, that same discount for everybody equally. But you will have to ask for it. See if I've missed other questions here. David Williams says he's got RoboForum installed and using it on his PC and he loves it. Yeah, I don't know how I would live without RoboForum. Bernard says, thanks for the info. I'm going to get it, but I got 3 people in the house. Oh, you need to get it for like 3 different users? Yeah, I'm not sure. But you certainly contact them and they can answer that. And he says, they were great on the show. Yeah, I originally interviewed Simon in 2006 when I was doing a radio show. And it's very unusual in this business that somebody is still doing the same job 14, 15 years later. And the fact that I'm still interviewing people and he's still representing and he's with RoboForm, very unusual. And that's the kind of stability I look for when I'm purchasing hardware or software for my customers that I have to support. Having that stability is very important, that the software has been around, it's mature, it's got a reputation, you know what to expect. And you don't have to worry about a new company and whether or not they're going to be in business tomorrow or whether or not they've got good customer service, or sometimes companies grow too quickly and everything falls apart. So the stability of RoboForm being around for such a long time is one of the reasons why I recommend it over other products. But another reason I recommend it over other products is it's the product I use, and I don't know the other products. I know their names and I know what they do, but I've had no reason to leave RoboForm and go somewhere else. So therefore, I don't consider myself an expert on those other products. So I can only go off my experience. I also want to mention I am still streaming off that little M1 today with the built-in APU with the Ryzen processor, and it's doing really well. This little streamer, I just can't get over how good it's working. This is the Ryzen 25, it's a Ryzen 5 2400G with 16 gigs of RAM. And I'm using the onboard video right now to process this, which means 13.9 gigs of RAM is available because the rest of it's being used for the built-in graphics. And you can see the streaming computer that I'm using being built if you look on my channel and search for M like Mary and the number 1. M1, that's the name of the case. It's a custom designed case, crowd designed and crowd-sourced, and it was contracted out for manufacture by Leon Lee, and I primarily built it to stream pre-recorded videos on Twitch 24/7, but it was costing me more money than Twitch was paying me because Twitch has paid me exactly $0.00 for all of the content that I have provided for them that they put advertising on and they profited from. So I stopped. And then when it came time to upgrade the streaming computer, I thought, well, I'll bring out the M1. And this thing has been working so well, I thought I'd continue to use it for a little while and give the other streamer a little time off, even though we just upgraded it. It just kind of mixing it up a little bit. So just taking a quick look here, we are on test 13 right now. So we're 91% through with no errors, and that's a good sign. I want to reiterate that even if memtest 86 says there's no errors, there still could be incompatibilities. So it's still possible that there's a RAM related issue. On the other hand, if memtest 86 says there's an error, then I'm 98% sure there's something wrong with the RAM. So if it passes memtest 86, it doesn't necessarily mean you're out of the woods with regards to RAM. If it doesn't pass memtest 86, then you're pretty darn sure you've got a bad stick of RAM, at least one bad stick. So just keep that in mind. The bad news is generally accurate, and the good news is hopeful, but not necessarily 100%. RAM is a very tricky thing to test. I don't like to use any other RAM testing software because it would require, much of it requires Windows to be running, which takes RAM to run, and you can't test the RAM that's running, that's in use. So it's very difficult to test RAM when you know the software takes RAM to test the RAM. It's like trying to change a tire on a moving car. So memtest 86 is a very small, light, I think it's a small Linux OS, very minimal, so that the RAM usage is very minimal, so we can test all that memory as accurately as possible. Tony says, I got RoboForm, but still trying to get my head around it. Tony, there's some great YouTube videos that demonstrate how to use RoboForm. For the most part, if you just simply use it to log in with your username and password and don't use it for anything else, that's where I would start if I were you. It's super, super easy. Then when it comes to auto form filling and password generating and all that other stuff, let yourself grow into that. But just get the gist of it down. And the gist of it is super easy. The minute you put your name and your password in manually to any site, RoboForm will pop up and ask you if you want to save it. Obviously, go ahead and save it. It has a default name for that, typically the name of the website, which you can change if you want to. And then immediately log out of that website and then click on your RoboForm icon, go to the login section, and you'll see basically what are bookmarks for all of the sites you've saved. Click on one of those, it'll automatically take you to that site, put in your username, it'll put in your password, and it will submit that, so you don't even have to click enter or OK. It just does it all for you and signs you in, just like a bookmark would in your browser. The bookmark would take you to eBay, but then you would have to put in your name and password. But with RoboForm, you could be at Google or any website, go to your RoboForm icon, go to logins, pick eBay. It will take you to eBay like a bookmark, but then when eBay asks you for your login info, it will auto submit that, and it'll even click OK, so that the next screen that pops up is what would happen after you hit enter after putting your username and password in. And once you start getting used to that and how convenient that is, then start looking at some of the other bells, whistles, and features of RoboForm. Don't try to absorb it all in one sitting because it can be overwhelming. It's a very powerful piece of software that can be utilized with many different processes such as auto form filling and password generation. So just baby steps. And don't be afraid to look up other YouTube videos walking through RoboForm, including a couple from RoboForm themselves, which were included in links with the interview with Simon. If you look back at that video and you see those video notes, you can follow through a very simple walkthrough of how their software works. Gary says it doesn't sound any different than LastPass. Yeah, Gary, it's sort of like me describing my Ford and you say it doesn't sound much different than my Chevy. There are differences, but to the untrained eye, they are nearly identical. You'll say, well, that has a key, yeah, and it has an engine, yeah, it's got four wheels, yeah, it takes you from point A to point B, yeah, it needs an oil change from time to time, yeah. So what's the difference? Well, there's differences in the same sense that there's differences between Chevys and Fords. Okay, I can't speak for LastPass because I don't have any personal experience with it, but at the same time, it's not that I don't recommend it. I don't have any issue personally with LastPass. I've heard nothing but good things about it. However, this discount code with RoboForm makes it less than $10 a year, and I think a lot of people are using no password manager at all. So I'm not suggesting anybody leave whatever password manager they have and go to RoboForm. I'm suggesting if you don't already have a password manager, you can't get a better deal than this, as far as I know. And RoboForm has never been this cheap before. I've never seen a discount this steep from them. So if you don't want to take advantage of that for any reason, that's your call. But I already know that I'm going to have people emailing me asking me if that's going to be offered again because they missed it. You know, they'll be watching the video in April, May, June, July. Hey, is RoboForm going to do that again? Not likely, not for a long time. So take advantage of it while you can if it will benefit you. Again, I don't profit from this. I don't have an affiliate link. RoboForm's not cutting me a commission. So there is nothing on my behalf where I benefit other than the fact that the potential for convincing them that they should sponsor a couple of shows or something, that's what I'm hoping to get out of it. So that's just there for full disclosure. Okay, how am I doing so far on my test? Still on test 13. So you'll see this test does take a while. We've been running now on this test for, it looks like 35 minutes. And we are testing, how much RAM is in here? 16 gigs. So you can imagine if we had 32 gigs, in theory, it would take twice as long for this first round of test. I generally allow for about an hour on average to let it run. And you can walk away, go watch TV, you don't have to sit there and stare at it. But since we're live here on YouTube and I can demonstrate it, I can answer your questions while we're waiting. LastPass is free. No, I think LastPass is $12 a year. I think like RoboForm is free for a limited, it's limited, the free version is what you can do. And I'm pretty sure, I can take a look here, but I'm pretty sure LastPass is like, let me take a look. They're nearly identical in the sense of how it's marketed and the features that it offers, and even the pricing is very competitive. I know that LogMeIn owns LastPass, LogMeIn, the remote software company, and LogMeIn, used to have a free version, and they took that away overnight. But for pricing on LastPass, it says that that there's a free version and a premium version, and so the difference is that with the premium version, you get multi-device password sharing with 1 gigabyte of encrypted file storage for personal security. And that's basically what we're talking about with RoboForm. You're getting multi-device. You can, with this one RoboForm license, you can install it on your laptop, your desktop, your smartphone. And it looks like LastPass is $3 a month, so 12 months would be $36. And RoboForm's right now on sale with the discount is under $10. But if you just want, so what ends up happening so what it looks like is with LastPass, with the free version, if your hard drive were to fail, let's say, or you got encrypted with ransomware, potentially, then you would no longer have access to the saved passwords because they're only on your machine. Unless you had manually backed those up yourself, you would not be able to go log in somewhere else. I think, from what I'm reading here, I don't think it's saving it on their servers. In other words, you can install that on multiple devices. I don't know. I'm not sure. It may just limit how many logins you can have, because RoboForm has a free version as well. Secure password vault, so it doesn't have unlimited shared folders. Not sure about that. No emergency access, no tech support. So that's the other thing, you're getting no tech support. But that's true of anything free. There's no tech support with anything free. But look, I'm not here to tell you which one to use. I just want to see you guys use a password manager of some sort. It's still seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is one of the most common passwords in use in 2020, 2019. And this has been going on now. I've demonstrated this almost every year. We look at the most common passwords of the year, and they very rarely change very much. People just don't take their password security very safely. They don't take it seriously, is what I mean to say. And then they end up becoming victims, and they want you to warn other people. Once it happens to them, they want to warn you, don't do what I did. So hopefully you use a password manager or have some system in place that that your passwords are being generated securely and that you have access to them encrypted, and that you can access them on multiple devices. So whether or not what LastPass does, I don't know, but looks like our first pass of MemTest 86 is complete. Let me take a quick look here. Okay, so as you can see now, it's running on test number 4. It's on pass number 2, and we have 0 errors. So as a result of that, I feel pretty confident that we don't have any RAM issues, but we still could. I want to emphasize, if it did find bad RAM, then we definitely have bad RAM. But if it didn't find bad RAM, then we probably don't have bad RAM, but we can't trust that 100%. But it's a good start, and it's what we want to see. So with that, I can just go ahead and shut the machine off. I'm just going to hold the power button in until it shuts off. And I have some notes from the customer with regards to how we can replicate the problem. I am concerned as to whether or not there is an M.2 drive installed. So what I want to do is I'm going to cut the power, and I want to take the heat sinks off and visually inspect if we have an M.2 drive in there. I think this board has a place just for one M.2 drive. Oh no, there's a second area down here for an M.2 that's not being used. And then we've got one underneath this heatsink right here. And I just want to inspect it and verify that there's nothing underneath of it. Which may be easier said than done, because ASRock has decided to use a very, very tiny screw on that. This is my JIS screwdriver, which is typically the perfect driver for dealing with M.2 stuff. And I don't think it's even, I can't tell, is it working or is it not working? It doesn't really feel like it's biting into the, oh yeah, I guess it is. Okay. I just dropped that screw. There it is. Little teeny tiny screw right there. All I really want to do is just look underneath and see if there's anything under there. There's the second one. Right there. Okay, so it's empty. And I'm just going to leave this out because I have a short memory span. I want to make sure it stays out so I don't think, oh, did I check that? So we know we're running with just the solid state 2.5-inch drive and the mechanical 2.5-inch drive. And I'm really curious what that mechanical 2.5-inch drive is. So let's take a quick look at what we're working with here. I suspect I'm going to have to come at this from the bottom. So these two screws and these two screws come out to remove this drive tray. And yeah, there's a mechanical laptop drive in there. Let's see what that is. One of the things I don't like about the design of this NZXT case is obviously if I take this last screw out, that whole hard drive cage is going to fall. And with a mechanical drive attached to it, which is what it's designed to hold, it could permanently damage the drive. So I feel like this should be a toolless design to allow for the drive to be installed without removing the entire cage. So I'm not quite sure why NZXT did that. However, it is unfortunate that he has probably one of the slowest laptop drives on the market, because it says Toshiba on it, and that has been my experience, that these drives are known for being painfully slow. Now I want you to take a look at the date. Can you guys notice the date right there? This drive is 8 years old. This drive all by itself, and he's just got one screw holding it in there. This drive all by itself will bring this computer to its knees. Mixing old hardware and new hardware is a recipe for disaster. I understand the logic. The logic is, I got this drive laying around, I'd like to use it. Well, what I would do is use it through USB. I would not install it internally. You see, USB 3, 3.1, 3.2, it's so fast. Jeez, just about dropped it. The USB is faster than this drive can transmit data. So rather than tie up your SATA bus and slow everything on your SATA bus down with this old drive, which is also likely to fail sooner than any other part in this computer, because everything else is fairly new. The performance on this drive, I'm not sure if we can read what the RPMs are, but it's probably 5,200 RPM, maybe. This is a 1 terabyte mechanical drive, and we can run Crystal Disk Mark on it to get an idea of performance, but for now I'm going to suggest that that may be the heart of his problem right there. This idea that you're saving money by reutilizing an old piece of hardware and you're combining it with the latest and greatest technology will almost always result in disaster, whether that's bizarre behaviors, poor performance, or the inconvenience of a complete failure. Mechanical drives, they all fail. The older they are, the more likely they are to fail. In my experience, you get about 4 or 5 years out of a mechanical drive. Now, that's an average. Some mechanical drives will last 15 years. Other mechanical drives will last 15 weeks. It just sort of averages out, in my experience, to be, 4 or 5 years they tend to die. Now, we've got a drive here that's 8 years old. It's actually more than 8 years old. If this was manufactured in January of 2012, we're well past January of 2020. So we're climbing up towards year 9 at this point. And solid state drives are cheaper now than, well, I wouldn't say than ever before. Prices on solid state drives have gone up recently for many drives like the ones I'm looking at, the Intel 660p and the Samsung 970 Evo Plus, I see the prices fluctuating almost every day, back and forth, up and down, up and down. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Trying to get an Intel 9700K processor, and the prices are up on those for some reason, over and above MSRP. But then I'm hearing that on March 22nd, a new batch is being released. I don't know how true that is. And if that's the case, they should be back at MSRP. I don't mind paying MSRP, but paying more, MSRP is the manufacturer's suggested retail price. That's the most you should have to pay for anything. You should never have to pay more than that. There should be discounts, coupons to get you below MSRP. But I have a thing in my head where I refuse to pay more than MSRP, because MSRP is saying to the retailers, this is what you should be selling this for, and this is what your profit's going to be. So for anybody to go over that is crazy, because MSRP is typically the most a product ever costs. But there gets to be sometimes issues with supply and demand, and that can push MSRP up. For example, things that people are buying right now because of this panic buying, a lot of everyday items are becoming more scarce because people are hoarding them, and then that results in people taking advantage of that and raising the price of what they have, knowing that you don't have a choice. If you want it, you got to pay for it. Well, in our case, we don't have to buy the CPU today. We can wait, and I'm fairly confident that that price is going to come down, and it's going to come down pretty soon. Like March 22nd, what, 5 days away? Intel's in the business of making chips. And when a manufacturer or somebody selling their chips sells it above MSRP, they didn't pay Intel more for it. Intel's still making the exact same amount of money when they sell it to the retailer. It's the retailer who's doing the gouging. So it does not benefit Intel. If anything, it can have a negative effect on the impression of the company. So it's in their best interest to flood the market with as many chips as possible to discourage that kind of behavior, because why would you pay more for it from one person when everybody else is wanting the same price? That's the average MSRP. So just because something's not available right now, just relax. It will become available. Things will return to normal, and we just kind of move through it. It's another day. But for businesses that don't have a choice, well, that's a different story altogether. But businesses have a lot more money to spend on stuff like that than you or I. So if a business pays 20 more bucks, it's not going to really affect them much, unless, of course, they need 100 new machines, and now they're spending, $2,000 more. But regardless, what I want to do is hook up my own drive to this and install a nice clean Windows 10 on it. So I'm going to go back here to my office, and I'm going to grab we'll grab a 2.5-inch solid state drive here. I've got a couple laying around. Let's see, what do I have? Oh, we could use this one. This is the Crucial drive that had a screw stuck in it on the edges, and I was trying to drill it out, and I cracked it. You can see there's a crack right across here, and it was because these two screws on this side. For that reason, I would never install this in a customer's build. So a drive like this is good to have around the shop to use for situations like this, for testing. And this way we're not messing around with the customer's data or risking damaging the operating system or anything like that. I'm assuming everything's on this drive here. So all we have to do is take the existing SATA cable that was hooked up to that old mechanical drive, and we'll place that on here like so. And then I need a Windows 10 installation media, which I have right here. And we'll plug that into one of these blue USB ports back here. And we'll just spin that around. plug in some power and an HDMI cable. And then let's install a nice clean copy of Windows 10. So let me move you back over to camera 2, and we should see the Windows 10 installation media boot up automatically. Go Shadow says, March 3rd, Amazon has Western Digital NVMe drives as deal of the day and got a 512 gigabyte Western Digital NVMe for $55. That's a good deal, real good deal. So apparently this drive that I've installed, I must have used it on another customer build. You can see I've got testing software already on it. So I think what I will do, I still would feel better doing a clean install. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Actually, we should be able to instruct it to start from the flash drive by going to Update and Security, and then we'll go to Recovery, Restart Now, and then it's going to come up with a menu here. Use a device, UEFI SanDisk Extreme, that's the Windows 10 installation media. So now it's going to restart the computer, and now I don't have to go into the BIOS or press F10 or F12 or whatever key you have to press for the boot menu options. This should now automatically restart from the flash drive. And then we'll wipe out the partitions on that solid state drive. Again, that's probably just left over from some prior project. And that's why I always disconnect the customer's hard drive, because I want to make sure that I don't make a mistake and erase the wrong drive or configure the wrong drive. Whenever you're building or working on a computer, you want to make sure you only have one hard drive attached to the system so that it avoids any mistakes or confusion. When we were done with Mitch's upgrade, we had only installed the NVMe drive, but Mitch had 2 mechanical drives and 2 Blu-ray drives. And I explained to Mitch that we're going to plug in one drive, and we're going to configure it, and then we're going to plug in the next drive and configure it. And every time we configure it, we shut the computer down. So for example, he's got 2 mechanical drives and 2 Blu-ray drives. So we say, okay, which of these 2 mechanical drives do you want to be your D drive? He's like, the one on top. Okay, so we plug the one on top into SATA port 0. The machine boots, and it says it's drive G, because it's remembering the way he had it configured from the previous motherboard. I said, okay, we can go in the disk management. We can change that drive letter to D. Is that what you want to do? He says, yes. Okay, now it's drive D. Now we shut it down. Now we do the next mechanical drive. We boot it up. It's drive H. We change the drive letter to drive E. Then we shut the machine down. We hook up the first Blu-ray drive. It goes into SATA port 2, right? We start with SATA port 0, then SATA port 1, then 2, and then 3. And we repeat this, so he's got C, D, E, F, and G. C is his NVMe drive, D and E are his mechanicals, and F and G are his 2 optical drives. And it takes a little bit longer, I suppose, than just plugging everything in at once and trying to figure it all out once you're in there, which drive is which. I like to keep things very simple, very clear, and that process works very well for me. It's never failed me. And that's the reason why I have that process. I've had a few contributions come in, and I want to give a few folks shouts out for their contributions and generosity. So my thanks to John Wilson, who's contributed $20. He says this is for some Cokes and cookies for the dog. Thank you, John. Dwayne Phillips contributed £5. Paul, 1961, says, hey, Carey, I hope all is well and you're staying healthy. Thank you, Paul. You too. He's contributed $20 Canadian. Mark Ostruskas contributed $20. Very generous contribution. Thank you, Mark. Let's make sure he's a moderator. Heinrich Anderson contributed 500 Swedish krona. Thank you for that as well. And is Dwayne Phillip a moderator? Let's make sure. Oh, we've got Peter Laycock in the chat room. Hey, Peter, welcome in. I hope you're doing well and staying away from this virus. Peter is a major supporter here at the channel. Say hello to Peter Laycock. Say hi, Peter. Give him a shout out. Peter has helped this channel immensely. Steve Devine has contributed $2. He goes, here's for a Coke. Kevin Sears has contributed $5, and Carlos Dos Anos has contributed £5 and says, have another Coke on me. All right. Well, you guys are keeping me in the Coca-Cola. Right on. And it looks like Mitch Morrison's just joined us in the chat. Welcome in. I see good friends in here. Pete Unwin and Jesse Kirk. Pete shared a picture of himself with all of his parts building his computer. Just tickles me when I get photos like that from viewers that are building their own machines that were inspired by watching my videos to do it. So I just love that. Make sure we add Carlos as a moderator in the channel as well. Okay, so now we should just be wrapping up the Windows 10 install. It'll probably ask us for username and stuff like that. And remember, now this is just a test hard drive. I'm free to experiment and do whatever I want to do with this drive. And it's a great sense of freedom. Now, if I only had one drive, I could always use a Acronis, boot from an Acronis rescue disk, and image the customer's current drive to a big flash drive or an external drive that's large enough to store however much data the customer has. And then I would be able to then erase the drive, do my testing, and then restore the customer's data back if need be. So I'm just going to type in the word user here for the username with no password. And we'll click no on that, decline on that. And I generally turn everything off but location settings, and with the goal being that it can set the time zone up for us automatically. Otherwise, it's kind of a pain in the butt, especially if you move the computer around. Remember, we have a lot of snowbirds, people that come to Arizona to get away from the cold winters. And so their time zone changes when they take their computer and go back home to their East Coast home. When the Arizona summers get so hot, they go back to their home state. And when their home state gets too cold, they come back to Arizona is their winter home state. And so they change time zones. And these are retired folks. And so changing the time zone is not something that's obvious to most of them. And so by leaving that option turned on, it should adjust automatically no matter where they are. Joshua wants to know, when I'm setting up a new PC for a customer, do you always set the login as user? I ask the customer what they would like me to set the login to, and that is what I adjust it to. I do not make decisions for my customers. Dr. Data has contributed $5. He says, greetings, Carey. Great video. Thank you, Dr. Data. Okay, we're just about done with that. And I guess this thing doesn't have Wi-Fi on it, does it? I guess I'm going to grab some Windows updates with this. So I'm going to grab an Ethernet cord so we can grab Windows updates. And then we can run some benchmarks and we can take a look at the status of this mechanical drive. Because I suspect this mechanical drive is going to be a problem, if it's not already a problem. I got to step over a Lyle, my Lyle carpet. That's my dog Lyle. He is laying right in the middle of the floor. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy. He says, walk around me. All right, so I'm going to plug the Ethernet cable in right now. And I'm going to pull the flash drive out that has Windows 10 on it because we're done with that. And then once it senses, yeah, I can click no there and click OK here. It wants to force me to create a Microsoft account, but down in this lower corner, I can say skip for now. And now we can go to Windows Update and we can grab not only the updates to Windows 10, but also driver updates as well for the graphics card and other installed hardware. Carey, do you own a console? Yes, I have an Xbox One. I can't tell you the last time I turned it on, but I have one. My nephew Merrick gave it to me for Christmas. He upgraded his. One of these days when I have some time, maybe I'll play with it. Carey, are you still leery on ASRock motherboards? You know what? At this point, the manufacturing process from MSI, ASRock, Asus, and Gigabyte are almost imperceptible as far as any differences go. They're pretty much all doing the same thing nowadays. I've been disappointed that Gigabyte takes about 3 days on average to get an answer to any support, which is really frustrating. That means if you're a business and you're down and you need to get an RMA, you know for sure you've got a bad board and you need an RMA, you're going to wait 3 days for Gigabyte to give you that RMA or to even start that process, assuming they're going to give you an RMA. And it's got me really down on Gigabyte right now. That, with that mounting hole and with the BIOS issue that only seems to affect Gigabyte boards, my eyes are looking at ASRock and MSI a bit differently right now. The manufacturers are always evolving and changing in technology, and what was once a good manufacturer may not be not such a good manufacturer. My screen has gone black for some reason. I don't know what's going on, but we'll be patient and see what happens here in a minute. In the meantime, just so you guys don't freak out, I'll put camera 1 back on so you can see that there I am. I think the machine's rebooting or something. I don't know what it's doing. Yeah, it's restarted itself. So we'll keep an eye on it here. That's not normal. Usually after Windows Update, it'll be a restart button you've got to press. It doesn't normally just do that on its own. So I'm not exactly sure what happened right there, but that's pretty interesting. "1,308 people are watching around the world right now. Why don't you give me a shout out? Let me know where you're watching me from as I continue to go back to Windows Update and grab more updates. Rick Lakes joins us from Minnesota, Mark Baggett in Massachusetts, Jesse Kirk's in Florida, Pete Unwin's in the UK, Brett Hibbs in Minnesota, Jay Toy in Chicago. We've got John Young in Kansas and Edwin Ojeda. If I can use the right mouse to scroll back up, because this text, at least, are flying in here. He's in Sullivan, Missouri, and David Anderson joins us from Kentucky. Dan J. in Chicago, Illinois. Sludgesters in Wyoming. Wallace joins us from Wappingers Falls, New York, and Pistol Knight is in London. Pavel Amasi is in Slovakia. Matt Power joins us from Maine. Carl Wilson says greetings from Beaverton, Oregon. Swanee from Australia says it just hit 5 a.m. Wednesday. UK South Coast is where John Edwards is located. B. Bozen, Wisconsin. Kevin McDonald in Kansas. Dr. Data's in Ohio with Johnny IT in the UK and David R. Southern in Portugal. Al Perez joins us from Brownsville, Texas. And Daniel Skinner's in Arkansas. Vern Mahoney is in Kansas. And George Wills joins us from Orlando, Florida. Selden Bell is in upstate New York. Jorgen Coleman is in Sweden. And David Bellamy joins us from Sheffield in the UK. And we've got viewers from Greece, Indiana, Idaho, North Carolina, Quebec, Wisconsin, Poteet, Texas, Vermont, Pee Wee, Ohio, Louisiana, Winnipeg, obviously in Canada, and Spring Hill, Florida, Denver, Colorado, Northeast Kansas. Peter Leacock joins us from Edinburgh, Scotland, and James Presley is in San Antonio, California. Corcadius Technology in Houston, Texas. And Leonard Garrett is in Higbee, Missouri. Gainsey95 joins us from Northern Ireland. Landon Cooley's watching from Dalton, Georgia. Orlando Breve was watching us from Brooklyn. Norman Elliott is in Bonnie, Scotland. Exhood61 joins us from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and Barry's in Sterling, Ohio. And Mike Joy joins us from St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. Jim Kenny in Kingston in Ontario, Canada, and Joshua Top in Plattsburgh, New York. Wathiel in Hawthorne, California. Oh, home to SpaceX, right? Colin McGarry joins us from Dublin, and Mark MC joins us from Belfast. Roger Hurt is in Olathe, Kansas. I still don't know how to pronounce that city. Dennis Williams is in Polk City, Florida. And Michael Mancini is in Little Egg Harbor in New Jersey. T. Hooper joins us from Alberta, Canada. Vitaly Kupchik is in Philadelphia. And William Dawson joining us from Cocoa, Florida. Very nice. Thanks, guys. I appreciate those shouts out. I'd like to see where people are watching me from. And let's hit retry here on this update. Make sure we get all these updates. Bearpaw is in Wales. Q-Ball says he's in the middle of the mitten. Of course, that's Michigan. Sort of the middle is what, like Lansing, Ann Arbor, somewhere right around there. Leslie lies in Italy and Spain. Oh, no, that's not. That's Buffalo, New Yorker joins us from Buffalo, New York. Well, go figure. Vern says Carey has a hard time. You need to write out Olathe. You need to write it out phonetically so I can see if it's Olath, Olathe, or Olathe. I can't tell what it is. These retries will often happen when an update is already happening in the background. And so it's trying to install the same update twice, and whichever one gets there first essentially causes the other one to fail. So one of the ways we get around this, in this case it's happened about 3 times. One way is you can be patient, which, I'm not. The other way is you can sort of force it by restarting the computer, and that will force it to finish those updates. And then when it comes back up again, we can start whatever updates are remaining. We'll check and grab those. So hang in there for a minute. Here we are. Vern says it's Olathe. Olathe? Or Olathe? Olathe doesn't sound right. It doesn't have 3 syllables in it, does it? We're going to go back to Windows Update. Vern says it's very close. All right. Closer than I was? I'll take it. It's Olathe. Olathe. Olathe? Is it Olathe, Kansas? Am I saying it correctly? Olathe. I'm not going to remember this tomorrow. So we keep getting an update error on this. This is pretty unusual. On this cumulative update, that's very, very unusual. And it may be a key to finding out what the problem is. There's a good chance that what's ever causing that update to error out is also responsible for the blue screens. And that, we've already checked with RAM with regards to BEMTest 86, but remember that doesn't guarantee that the RAM is 100%. Carey, you did a video on Acronis. Can you help me find it? I've got probably a dozen videos demonstrating Acronis, but if you just type in YouTube search Carey Holzman, and be sure you spell my name correctly if you want your search to be accurate, Carey space Holzman space Acronis should pull up any number of videos where I either demonstrate Acronis by using it in a repair or an upgrade, or I have Acronis on specifically to talk about the product. Yeah, we're back to that same error again. This is very unusual, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to update this graphics card driver first and foremost, because I want to test the graphics card to see if during the benchmarking it causes any blue screen errors. And so for that, I need to know what graphics card I've got, which I'm not even sure because I haven't been paying attention. But if I look at, let's see, let me go full screen so I can see better. Let me look at, let's just go in the control panel. And we'll go under, let's see, large icon view, system, device manager should tell us what graphics card we've got here. Display adapter. So GTX 1660. So I'm going to go to nvidia.com. Oh, this is new. So the whole computer has rebooted itself. Very interesting. Very interesting. So here's what we do know. We know that this is a clean install of Windows 10, so we know we don't have a software-related issue here. And we know that just we have a Windows update that's failing, and just by browsing the web trying to update the graphics driver, the system has reset itself. So I'm going to try this again. And what we really want to see is consistency. We want to be able to see the same error happen often. We're going to go to NVIDIA, and I'm going to once again attempt to download the driver for the graphics card, which I mentioned was what, a GTX 1660. Yeah, that looks good enough. We'll just do that. Now, it's possible that that BIOS update may be a result of this, and that we should be able to roll backwards to an earlier BIOS update. However, I don't like rolling backwards in general unless I have to. So I'm going to try other things first, and then when I'm sort of exhausted out of that process, then reversing back to an earlier BIOS update where we potentially don't. See, they don't specify why the BIOS update wasn't recommended for those chips. but this could be why. You picked a 1660 Super. Yeah, actually, NVIDIA doesn't make a separate driver for every graphics card. They have families of drivers. So I don't believe there's any difference with any 16 series, 1650, 1660, Ti, Super, OC. I'm not exactly sure why they collect that specific information when it's the same driver for all of them. So you don't have to necessarily be that specific. You end up getting the same file. Try it yourself. Select multiple different NVIDIA graphics cards, like multiple 10 series cards or multiple 16 series cards, and then compare the files next to each other that you download, and I think you'll find they're the same file. Now, with other families of graphics cards, like the 900 series, you're going to see a different driver than you will, say, than for the 20 series. But I believe all the 20 series use the same driver, and I think even the 16 series either use the same driver as the 10 or the 20, I can't remember, but that's why I selected 16. Greg says, are you saying if I download 1080 Ti drivers to my 1030, they will work? I've never heard of a 1030. I know there's a 1050 and a 1060 and a 1070 and a 1080. And to the best of my knowledge, they all use the exact same driver, yes. But a 1030 I've never heard of, so I don't know. But I do believe that all the 10 series cards use the same driver, or the 16 series all use the same driver. Try it and see. You'll see. Just certain features are enabled or available. They're not paying their developers to write a separate driver for every model of graphics card, or they'd have to have a lot of developers with as often as they release new drivers. Yeah, it would probably take them longer to code it. $1030 is a really bare bones card. Yeah, I don't know anything about the 1030, so I can't tell you. Nick says, knowledge base article 45517. Oh, knowledge base update is causing the issue. All right, so we've got the graphics card installed. Now look into that, Nick, but for right now, I'm just going to keep moving forward here. So as you can see, the driver installed without a problem, so no issues there. What I want to do is grab my utilities flash drive right here, and we'll plug that in. And I need to close down camera 1 so I can see the whole screen here. So we'll close that. And we'll go to the flash drive. And we want Uncle Carey's Windows 10 optimizer. Let's throw that on there real quick, just because we can. And that's available. It sells for like 10 bucks over at, the links are in the video notes. It's just a little app I made that just does little minor tweaks that you can do by hand. This just does it all for you consistently when you work on a lot of machines like I do. To automate that process is a huge time saver. And it looks like the machine has automatically reset itself in the midst of my utility running. That's not supposed to happen. So at this point right now, I suspect we could have incompatible RAM is potential. That BIOS update that wasn't recommended apparently for this chip, according to what you guys are saying, that could also be cause for concern. So what I'm going to do is let's bring you back to camera 1. And let's go full screen so you guys can see me here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the machine down, and I'm going to just randomly pull one RAM module. I think I'll take this one here on the edge because it's easier for me to get to. Looks like only one side comes off. So the RAM we're using, if we want to look at the details of this RAM, is G-Skill Ripjaws 5, which can run up to 3600, which really shouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to leave one RAM module out. We're going to start the computer up again. And let me bring you back to camera 2. And let's take a look here. Could XMP be causing this problem? Well, XMP should be disabled because we upgraded the BIOS, and in upgrading the BIOS, all of the default settings would have been reset. I'm not aware of a BIOS update that carries over settings, but we can double check it. Certainly, XMP can cause an issue like that for sure. However, not having XMP turned on shouldn't cause a problem. So we could have a RAM incompatibility here. I'm going to try and run my utility again. Let's see if we have any better luck this time around. Wants to restart. Yes. And we're rebooting one more time here. And we'll let that run for just a moment. And let's try the next thing. You know, it's pretty interesting to me the way the machine is randomly restarting, and that's a good thing. Nothing worse than a customer sends you a computer where you cannot replicate the problem. This we're obviously able to replicate. It does seem to be happening randomly. And at this point, everything is suspect, including the power supply, could cause these kind of symptoms. And that's sort of, you know, one of the frustrating parts of this job can be that every potential component can, when failing, can all share the same symptoms. So I think what I'll do is I'll take over Prime 95. Let's bring that over. And then we'll bring over, I'll get an old version of HW info. We can delete that. What else do we have? Crystal disk mark I want. And crystal disk info I want, because that'll give us information on that mechanical drive later, which I'm not too worried about right now. And what am I forgetting? Oh, I want HW info. Let's put the Heaven benchmark on here. That's good. That's good. let's see, we'll eject the flash drive. We don't need that anymore. Okay, let's try the Heaven benchmark out. Let's see if it'll run through that without rebooting itself. That'd be interesting. So far, the machine's been running good since I pulled that one RAM module out, but let's not jump to any conclusions. Let me bring camera 1 back online and minimize myself here to a corner so we can see what's going on. And then F9, I think, starts the benchmark. There it goes. And let's see if it completes this without any issues. Jens Carlson says that he gets a lot of CX and CXM power supplies creating this problem. Well, it's potentially a power supply issue, though it's not the first on my list to check for errors like this. Normally, errors like this are caused by RAM-related issues. Sometimes they can be caused from heat-related issues, and I would work my way down to what would be sort of the least likely, which would be power supply in my experience. The streaming computer that I've been using for the last couple of years has a CX600, one of the cheapest power supplies you can buy, and it's been rock solid. So I don't like this idea of saying, you know, all of this model of power supply are bad, because clearly they're still manufacturing them. There's no class action lawsuit. You may have just had a bad batch or a couple of bad ones, but it is still potentially a cause of the problem until we, you know, remove other more likely issues, at least from my experience. Now, so far, the machine has been working fine since I pulled that one RAM module out. Sometimes there's RAM compatibility issues where it runs fine with one stick of RAM, but with 2 sticks, it crashes. And some of the BIOS updates that we've seen address that with updates. And again, this could be related to why that BIOS update isn't recommended for this series of chip. It could be a RAM compatibility issue. Or we could swap the RAM out for a different brand or a different speed of memory and put 2 sticks in and not have the problem at all. But so far, it's running really well. So we'll see what happens here. In the meantime, I think I need to get another Coke. That's what I think I need to do. So far, so good. Everything's looking like it's supposed to. I see Marty's joined us. Hey, Marty, thank you for the contribution. Marty just contributed $5 to the channel. Go Shadow says, I ordered 2 RAM sticks that came in the same package but didn't work together. And they had stuck RAM with different timings in the same blister pack. Oh, that's an interesting catch. I never really paid much attention to that, to be honest. If they look alike, I generally don't pay that much attention to comparing the stickers. But that's an easy mistake that somebody could make in manufacturing if they're packing them by hand. Now you can see it ran that test just fine with no problems. So let's check the other memory module out. Let me close this down. Abdul Azim Patel has contributed $10. He says, do we have a bad memory module? Well, it may not be that it's bad. It may be a compatibility issue with the motherboard or with the chip. This is more seen in my experience with AMD than with Intel. AMD, especially with their first generation Ryzen chips, had lots and lots of memory incompatibilities. And to some extent, they tend to be a little bit more finicky than Intel, even to this day, depending on the chip. Like Threadripper can be, well, but the same is true with the high-end Intel chips too. When you get to that real bleeding edge, things can get a bit finicky when it comes to RAM timing. So what I want to do, I'm going to hit power on here and make sure we shut this off. I want all the lights out. I want all the power drained. And let's just take a quick look at the stickers on the RAM and make sure these all have the same timings. So the one in my left hand, in fact, let's go full screen. The one in my left hand has these timings. Manufacturing dates 2018 of September, DDR4 3600. And then this one can go up in front of it. 19, 20, 20, 40, down, yeah, 1.35, Intel XMP ready. What is on that memory module? There's something on it right there. I don't know what that is. Should I be concerned? It's kind of gross. I don't know what that is. I'm going to grab a Q-tip and clean that out, whatever that is. What's up, Lyle? Lyle's just hanging out. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but it's kind of gooey. There's something gooey on this memory module. Now this is a heat spreader, so in theory it shouldn't matter, but it's just sort of something to be aware of. What I'm going to do is put both memory modules back in, and I want to run the Heaven benchmark one more time and see. Let me make sure we're in the correct sockets as well. We should be in sockets 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Let me take a look here. Typically written on the board are the socket numbers for the RAM, and usually you want to be on sockets 1 and 2 first. Although ASRock and ASUS often do it differently. I have to look up the manual. I don't see any numbers at all on the board, which, if that's the case, that'll be the first board I've seen in years that doesn't have it written on the board. I'm also checking all of the mounting points. All the screws are used properly. That looks correct. Well, I guess I'm going to have to look it up in a manual to see which socket numbers are which. And for that matter, I can't really tell if he's plugged into the right CPU fan header either, because they're both black. So I'm going to look up the manual to figure out which CPU fan header is supposed to be used, the top one or the bottom one, and which memory sockets are supposed to be used. So to do that, once again, I'm going to go to Google. And back under the support for the board, I'll pull up the English language manual, which is in Chinese. Did I hit the wrong button? English. Okay. And let's look under, this should be pretty quick. For the RAM install, it wants me to use A2 and B2. It actually gives different memory installation instructions for Summit Bridge versus Raven Ridge versus Pinnacle Ridge, which is interesting because you wouldn't see that on Intel. But for two memory modules, it looks like A2 and B2 is pretty universal across the entire family. And then with regards to which one is A2 and B2, there should be a diagram of the board right up in the front of the manual. We should see an overlay of the board. There it is. And if I magnify that, so the customer did have A2 and B2 in use, so that's the socket closest to the edge of the board, and then you skip one. And the CPU fan is the lower header, so the customer had that hooked up and installed correctly. I just verified that was all correct. So I will put that back just as it was. That's the exact opposite of what I'm accustomed to, but this is what happens when you get used to a specific manufacturer. You know, it becomes your definition of normal the way a manufacturer does it. And then you go to another manufacturer and find they do everything 180 degrees different. Who's right and who's wrong, you know? It just, one of the benefits of working on familiar hardware is that you don't have to stop and necessarily check things like that, because it's generally the same across the board, across the entire lineup of motherboards from a specific manufacturer. Yeah, I don't like the way that RAM doesn't really click in on the bottom. But let's fire it back up, and we'll run the Heaven benchmark again, or at least attempt to run it and see what happens. So once again, I will bring you back over to camera 2. Maybe. Maybe not. You know, I wasn't quite sure I wasn't going to get interrupted today with this broadcast, and knock on wood, so far so good. Interesting. Shut it off. I'm going to pull one memory module out, and we'll fire it up again. It sounds like it's initializing. Yeah, that's good. And there's our post screen. We'll wait for it to go into Windows. I'm going to try and put that memory module back in one more time. Try and get some consistency here. Remember, and I want to underscore, that I'm using a test hard drive, just a spare hard drive, in this case a solid state drive, for doing all this testing, so that none of the customer's data is being altered in any way, shape, or form. We've not even so much as seen the customer's desktop. It's not necessary until we get this figured out. You know, my main focus was on that laptop mechanical drive, which doesn't seem to have any impact whatsoever on this problem, other than the fact that it's just going to be I can tell you, if it's not a problem today, it's going to be. But I'll talk to the customer about it. So that boots up just fine. Let me shut it back down. Then when I'm putting the memory in, I definitely want to make sure the switch is off. And one more time, we'll see if we can't seat this a little bit better than it was seated before. Oh, I heard it click that time. Okay, let's try again. Now, just for giggles, let's go into the BIOS, and we can turn XMP on just to see what will happen. Let's see. See, it's showing at 2133, and I thought it wanted 2400. Load XMP setting is on auto. Oh, that's interesting. Let's set it there. And then usually what F10 is usually save and exit. Save configuration, exit, yes. This should get interesting. Let's see if it'll even post. So far, so good. And we'll run Heaven again. Oh, it's doing that little thing. Remember when it did that before? It minimized? What did we do to fix that before? Was that an XMP related issue? I can't remember. Robert says, I made a PayPal donation of $5 from K31. Enjoy your Coke. Hey, thank you, Robert. Well, I definitely feel like the customer's got some RAM compatibility issue here. I don't think the RAM is necessarily bad. I just don't think it works well with this board. And so I've got some spare RAM that I can continue testing with, but the fact that that minimized when I ran it suggests to me that it's not happy. But I want to see if it'll complete it without rebooting. In the manual, where I was looking at the RAM configurations, it was suggesting 2400, assuming I was looking at the right family architecture name, which I'm not familiar with on AMD's side. And of course, I can also run Prime 95 on it for a while. I do need to wrap up the stream here within the next 10 minutes or so, regardless, because I am running out of time. But we can continue this diagnostic tomorrow, perhaps, if time permits. I'll probably get an earlier start, as I did today. Just kind of depends on how crazy things get. So if you guys have any questions for me, any technical questions, I'd be happy to answer your questions here in the chat. What email address to use for Amazon gift card to Carey? There should be a link in the video notes that you can click on. It says, help keep this YouTube channel sponsor free by contributing an Amazon gift card. And if you click that link, it should be set up for you. But yes, the email address that was provided there by Daniel Skinner is correct. And thanks for, again, you guys are the sponsors here, and that helps keep me from having to try and sell you razor blades and other nonsense in order to keep this channel moving forward. And of course, a huge shout out and thank you to Madi Yoel as well. Abdul Azim Patel wants to know, am I going to stick with Gigabyte boards or am I going to Asus? I don't know yet. I just don't know yet. I might start leaning more on MSI. I don't know. I have not been happy with the Asus boards, and I've not been happy with these Gigabyte boards. So ASRock is a little too similar to Asus in a lot of ways that I don't like this whole A2B2 thing with the RAM modules doesn't make sense. If you're not an engineer, like if you're a normal, regular person, it doesn't make sense to use A2 and B2. It should be A1 and B1. Things like that really annoy me. So that only leaves one manufacturer left, which is MSI, but they also tend to be more expensive. But I'm starting to understand why. Newcomer 8771 contributed $5. He says, Carey, thanks for your amazing work. Hey, well, thank you. Thanks for joining. Is it a Gigabyte board we're using today? No, this is an ASRock board. Okay, well, the test ran and it was successful. Let's do this. I still have a few minutes left, so let's start Prime 95 and see where it takes us and monitor these temps and see what happens. So let's get out of this. Let's go here, and we'll run hardware info. They do make this complicated. AMD makes it a little more complicated to read their temps. I don't want a beta. Sensors. Can I close that, or does it shut the whole thing? It closes the whole thing. Okay. Where's my temp in here? Pinnacle Ridge. All right, so we know that's Pinnacle Ridge now. There's a RAM info, BIOS date. So that's the date of the that version of BIOS was released. Somewhere in here is our temp. Yeah, so these are our temps. So let me minimize that. We'll keep this over here. We'll bring up prime 95. And we'll let that run for a little bit. Keep an eye on those temps and see what they do. So I know you've got to do a little math here to get the numbers. I can never remember what that is, and it varies from one AMD model of chip to another. But I think we look at the T-die and we add or remove or subtract. I can't remember. I'm sure somebody in the chat will. Let me know what that's going on there. Oh, sorry, let me move the mouse. Let me go back over here. And right now it's a 11:45. I'll let this run a few minutes, but I do have to wrap things up. However, if you have questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them for you. Snack Z contributed $10. He says, can you try running 3D Mark Time Spy later? I was the one who tried to fix it before. Yeah, certainly. Bubba2424 has contributed $20. Thank you, Bubba. I appreciate that very much. We'll make sure both of you guys are moderators here. I need more viewers like you. Ron says, I still have an NF7S that works. What is that? A Noctua cooler? I don't know what that's a reference. Oh, that's an old motherboard? I don't know what you guys are talking about. The VRMs suck on MSI? I don't know that that's true. Carey, have you given up on the contact lenses? Just lately, things have been a little crazy for me, and I've been out a lot. And when they're in my eyes for a while, my eyes start to get really dry. So lately, I've not been wearing them because there's so much going on behind the scenes. I can't even begin to get into it. But it's just personal life. It's just life getting in the way of living. Steve Devine says, AMD is very picky with RAM timings. If it's not CL16, you may have issues. I can't remember what the RAM module said. I know that the rewind feature is enabled on this video. You can roll back and take a look at that. Rodney says, did I build this computer? No, I did not build this computer. This was built by the viewer and has taken it to several different places for repair work, and nobody can seem to figure out. Every time he goes to start a particular game at blue screens, and he says he's used it for less than an hour since he's built it back in around August, and just is desperate to get it working, and shipped it to me from Maryland. Dennis says, Carey, you built the CPU with my hands, so thank you. It's been working great. Nice. So clearly you followed one of my videos, saw what I did and repeated it and built yourself a good computer. I love hearing that. Wonderful. A corrupt game client. No. They did all the basic stuff like that has already been taken out of the equation. So it's not going to be something that simple. I mean, I'd love it if it were that simple, but no, they wouldn't go through the extent. I had a talk with them before they sent it to go through some of the basics. Can RoboForm be used on a flash drive and then be able to be used at a public library? All you'd have to do is go to roboform.com on the public library computer and log in with your RoboForm login information, and you can use it right through roboform.com. You don't need to do that old school flash drive stuff anymore. Is anybody else finding the volume too low on the microphone? I've been kind of speaking a bit low. Kevin says clicking the Amazon gift card link does not fill in the recipient email address for you. Oh, that's good to know, Kevin. Thank you for letting me know. I thought it did that automatically. Dennis, we'll make sure you're a moderator here. Yeah, streaming is having, I can see OBS is having a couple of dropped frames, but it's not too bad. We're mostly okay. It might have gone offline for just a moment, but we're gonna wrap it up here. I think right about now is a good time to wrap it up. So let me give a shout out to, what are you posting here? Hold on, let me take a look at what this is. Having a problem with games crashing for some benchmarks like 3D Mark Time Spy. When I got the rig, my friend told me it would give me a blue screen of death. Oh, this is the person that worked on this machine. I only tried the benchmarks and no game. I've updated everything on the motherboard, BIOS plus Windows. I tried an RTX 2070 and had the same problem. Tried the RAM test and all was fine. Well, it did pass the RAM test, but it still acted a little different. Tried using a different power supply, replaced the motherboard with the same motherboard. Using default settings in the BIOS only, did a clean boot. The only thing I haven't tried to replace yet is the CPU and the CPU fan. 3D Mark errors. Said he tried doing a clean boot by turning everything off, but it doesn't say that he tried reinstalling Windows. Did you try to reinstall Windows at any point? What did you decide for an off-site production location? That's still in negotiations right now. I'm still waiting to hear back. And until I hear back, I'm sort of in limbo. I'm not looking anywhere else because if this place will work out, there's no point in me looking anywhere else. So I am waiting patiently to find out. According to the report, it was a video scheduling error. I don't know what a video scheduling error is. Interesting. So I think our temps are looking just fine. I really don't see any issues here temperature-wise. I'm going to go ahead and close this down and start wrapping it up for today. And I will continue the testing. I'll do the Time Spy test. We'll pick it up tomorrow, ideally, unless something else comes up. Let's shut this down. I got to use the right mouse to do it though, Carey. There we go, shut down. And a shout out to all of the generous contributors today. So let me do that right now. So my thanks go to I'm sorry, I'm looking for the list. There it is. Snacks contributed $10. Bubba2424 contributed $20. Newcomer 8771 contributed $5. Madi Yoel, thank you, Madi. Steve Warrington contributed $2. Dr. Data contributed $5. Melody Chambers contributed £2. Abdul Azim Patel contributed $10. Madi again with $5 and Dr. Data with $5. Great friend of the channel, Peter Laycock, contributed 20 pounds today. Thank you, Peter. I hope you're feeling well. Dwayne Phillip contributed 5 pounds. Paul 1961 contributed 20 Canadian dollars. Mark Ostruzga contributed $20. Heinrich Anderson contributed 500 Swedish krona. Rick Lakes contributed $5. John Jack Wilson contributed $20. Steve Devine with $2. Kevin Sears with $5. And Carlos Dos Anjos has contributed 5 pounds. So thanks you guys for supporting the channel, for being my sponsors. Sludster just contributed $2 right there under the wire. He says, thank you, Carey. Hey guys, we're going to follow up on this because we don't have any answers yet. Another contribution from Rochester NY87 contributed $10. He goes, sorry, just got in. I always have to contribute. That's very kind of you. Thank you. And Pavel Amasias contributed €2. And he says, do you think solid state drives will fully replace hard drives? Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Scotto says the RAM has to be manually set to 3200 in the BIOS. You know, I don't. So it's running 100% perfectly right now. Nothing is crashing. So what I'm going to do later is I will run the time spy test. Snacks, if you want to email me directly, then you and I can talk about the tests that you did, and it might lead me to an answer that much sooner. I still am sort of leaning on an incompatibility with the RAM. I think something with the RAM doesn't like that chip, and I will probably end up swapping the RAM out with some other RAM I've got here just to verify it. But before I do that, just with the BIOS updated and all the settings changed and XMP turned on, I'm curious to see Time Spy if it will crash, because you're telling me that it would never complete without crashing. And so if it does complete, then it suggests to me that it's a memory compatibility issue. My concern is that by adjusting those timings in the BIOS manually, if that fixes it, that means anytime the BIOS is updated or gets reset, the customer will go back to crashing again. So ideally, we would just put different memory in that wouldn't require manual BIOS settings in order to stabilize the system once and for all. I can see that the video is skipping and jumping a bit here. We're losing some frames. So it's probably a good time for me to go ahead and wrap it up anyway. I think I'm getting the signal from YouTube themselves. So thanks to all my friends in blue for, you know, playing whack-a-troll today with all the bots and trolls that jumped in the chat. I appreciate your help very much. If you haven't been turned blue yet, it's just a matter of time. Really, I'm just looking for people that are friendly and supportive. And if you come in here, I'm like this close to trying to finish the stream and I'm having issues. So I'm hoping it'll stabilize here in just a moment. If I'm patient enough, the stream will hopefully come back. So just almost there. It is struggling a bit. There seems to be an upload issue. But I am just trying to say goodbye ultimately. So thanks you guys for watching, and I will see you all again very, very soon. And until then, bye for now.